at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Guys and gals of Gun Whips.
And welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. Come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns for an hour or so. So this is episode 1200 something. We've been doing this show for quite a while, since beginning of 2016, every single weeknight. And over those years, the show's format has changed back and forth a couple of different times. And now it is an open conversation, so we can talk about not what manipulators would have us program the topics, but instead topics deliberately, so that we can evolve the conversation, so that we can strategically develop new tactics with the new players in 2A in the gun community. And then at the same time that we go at it with the dedication and focus of a hunter or a fighter, we have fun, and we talk about real gun stuff, the stuff that the others are too afraid or not getting paid to talk about, right? So with that in mind, I've been running this thing on the screen here mainly to give us a thumbnail to manipulate the platform. And we're going to run this thing on YouTube there. Oops, I clicked the wrong button. We'll put it back up here, but I will bring this over. Will this work? No, I guess not. So we'll bring this down, and then we'll bring this over. So this is a conversation, as I mentioned. And we have a few things we can talk about. I'm going to go grab the video here over on the YouTube there. And I've been writing in the description of the video the stuff that I've been watching since I posted the video. And that's what we're looking on the screen here. I guess I can close that completely now. So what am I looking for? Not this, not that at all. I'm looking for this. So we missed last night. Sorry about that. I laid down to take a quick nap, and it turned out to not be a quick nap. So we didn't have a show yesterday. We'll have one today. So Clover had a show earlier. Show of hands, anybody seen that show? I'll link up there if anybody wants to join into the conversation tonight. See if anybody watched Clover's show earlier. They were talking about context, conveyance, and communication. Again, he does a good effort, but he was wrong. Delta 4 heavy rocket launch again tonight. It's been pretty fun watching private space industry flex their muscles. So they launched a Delta 4 heavy launch vehicle today, and it ran for a successful launch, and I was up there for quite a while. They had the other one the other day. I guess we didn't talk about that one. Yesterday they launched a what do they call that thing? A Starship, which is pretty awesome. Went up, came down, just about landed. Like, they just really wanted to test some things, so they anticipated 50-50. Wouldn't even, live the whole life of the launch, and it almost got to the ground and then exploded. So it was more than they could have hoped for, and then it exploded at the end. So it was awesome. We got to see a rocket explode yesterday. Let's see. We also have. Oh, this was Walt. I don't know if Walt's going to show up tonight, but Walt is one of the new superstars. He's literally doing more in the last little bit here than a lot of people have been ever, and really. And did another exceptional show today, talking about. What the hell was it about? I think it was about a specific thing. Was it a video? I think it was just an article. But really, I thought he brought up some really good points, and he brings them up in ways that gives me a new perspective, where it's difficult to get. You can't talk to an anti-gunner. How are you going to learn how they think? Well, I can listen to Walt's stuff, and he has a way to describe some stuff, the situation in a way that I think I can understand there. At least I assume I can understand other side's position a little easier. And he gives you words to use to describe that. Really good stuff. I really can't say enough good stuff about Walt. Glad that he's on our usually.
That was the one about the lady who had her daughter was murdered or whatever.
Talk about.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's a good one.
And what I like about it is, and I was thinking about this after I watched it. What the hell? I don't think it tells me when I watched this. I think it was I watched this one and then I had to go do something. So I had watched this. It was in my head. And like I say, I mentioned it in here. He gives us new strategy. He gives me new strategies for debate for sure. But the skills, I try to say he gives me new skills in conversations, the way that he uses words and then I guess the way that he describes some of the arguments. Anyway, I had that in my head as I was thinking about this same topic and another way to attack it or another way to bite into it, let's say. And yeah, that's where I really like that he's bringing that to the table, where everybody else is doing other things. He's bringing maybe the same old type of news article, because the specifics of the news article honestly really don't matter, but the way that he's dealing with it and the way that he's approaching it is novel, at least for me. I haven't seen anybody else approach it that way, and I don't know if it's just a logical way or if it's just a legal way or something, like if it's just a method that I'm not aware of or if it's a whole new way of doing it. Either way, it's new to me. And
well, I think one of the things for him is because I believe he was a philosophy major, so he's got that whole background there, and
like he brings that set of skills or that toolbox to it,
which is phenomenal. Because I think back and you'd always hear something like philosophy major. You're like, oh well, what are you going to use that for, Slick? Way to rack up that college debt and not have a job for it. This is a amazing area to use it in, and it's nothing I would have ever thought of. Honestly, every time I listen to Walt or watch one of his videos, because I think Walt's only a couple of years younger than me, I sit back and I'm like, wow, I wasted my life, because just the stuff he's breaking down and the way with his education and that background he has with a philosophy major and now going to school for law, it's incredible, his take. And he brings to the table those common arguments, because like a lot of the arguments he'll make that the anti-gunners would make, I probably worded that poorly, but he's bringing up their argument, saying this is what they would say.
Yeah, well, he's
this is how we rebuttal it.
He's like describing their argument from their side instead of just being against it.
Yep. And because I've encountered all of those arguments and I try and break them down when I'm having those conversations, but he does it on such another level.
Well, in the accurate way it's described, I agree. So in this particular one, he's talking about the emotional argument, I guess is the way to summarize it. Where another one that I really appreciated that he did, he was talking about the consequential, or I'm probably saying it wrong, but the argument of consequence, like you can't do this because of that, right? Well, that gives a name to that type of argument, where before we just understood somebody was hitting us with their right hand and they can also hit us with their left hand. Now we have ways to describe it so that we can talk to each other. Hey, when somebody comes at you with a consequential, is that the right word? Consequentialism argument. Yeah, consequentialism argument. here, when you can bring that back to them and say, okay, you're bringing up a consequential argument. So where do you draw? Where is that slippery slope? So if you just say slippery slope, they're like, whatever. Yeah, I've heard of that buzzword before. You're just saying buzzwords. But when you can say, okay, your consequential argument style leads me to question where you're going to draw the line. Like, you say that this is a cause and effect. Well, I say that the reason that we live in a safe society is a causality of firearms existing. Like, you have a way to say that that's not fact, like, because you were talking about hypothesis. Anyway, we have a new way of attacking them that I'm sure they haven't expected, but they haven't been told, here's how you're going to get response to this. They're going to be told something more like, okay, this is where they're going to hold their breath, or this is where they're going to threaten you, or this is where they're just going to walk away. So when you can give them a response that they're not expecting, win. But if you can give them a response that they're not expecting and it's at their level of snootiness or better, like, you definitely win. And if you can impress them that you know more, then they might especially the kind of person we're talking about, if you can impress them that not only do you disagree, but you know more than them and you have a way to express that, like, correctly, then they're going to respect that. They're not going to respect you pounding your chest if they're not a physical person, right? They're not going to respect that. They're going to consider that something else, right? But if you can have a discussion on their terms, that you outfight them or outparry them or position them on their terms in their realm, then they're going to be like, okay, this person has, the skills, the nuance, the awareness of where I fight, my type of fighting, and they know all this, then I need to go. If nothing else, they're going to either have respect for you or they're going to go, I need to go research this more. And hopefully when they research it, they'll get, aware of where we're coming from, especially if you got them across to them some points that, they have to go research. They'll figure things out because we are correct. I believe we're correct. They're based off of emotion and bullshit arguments. And then they are consistently, whatever, like they've never experienced an actual argument. They've only experienced getting mad, getting threatened. They say they're getting threatened. They'll perceive things as getting threatened. And then more than likely people just not responding to them because they're usually coming up with dumb stuff, that most people are going to say it's not worth addressing. So then they're going to say, oh, they won't even address us, right? But anyway, so if we can change that dynamic and we can start addressing them in terms that they can understand, that's where I think we're gonna, that's different than what we've done, and I think we've got a potential there. But that's something that Walt brings to the table for damn sure. And like I was saying, that's what I was liking, is that because of this time he was talking about the play on emotions, which is, we all know that one, and he just hasn't talked about that one before. But because that's kind of a common sense, like that one's the main one that they use. But because he gave this one a name, which again we all know, but then he gave that other one the whatever, now I can't think of it, like consequentialism. Then we know again that there's like others, and whatever I was thinking of, I couldn't remember earlier, but that made me think of something else that has been on. I forget what I was even thinking about. It was some other discussion that I've been having, but because of the way that Walt approaches these things and I guess defines things or whatever, it gives us a way to express what, the elements of these things, the characteristics of these discussions, these arguments. It made me think, okay, cool. Here's another way I can use to describe this situation so that we can basically get past like a block. In this other project, we had a block, and I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to apply something that I got from Walt and just try to express this in a different way so that they understand I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just don't have the same whatever, we don't agree that this has priority. Like, I'm not disagreeing that that's important. I'm just not, I just don't want to address it right now. There's something else I want to address right now. But anyway, so we'll see if anybody else jumps in. Erstwhile's out there, DJ's out there. I don't have a lot of people, so I have to do my obligatory mope. Let's see. So we also have Daily Bullet today was Angela Armstrong from Faster. She did a pretty decent breakdown of what Faster is. And I guess that's all I had in my notes. You got anything, since it's been a couple of days, anything been on your burner?
Oh man. I think we really covered everything as far as any shows or anything went that I thought were worthwhile. Walt's been just putting out some great videos recently. I was actually surprised because I haven't watched his stuff in a week or two, and when I jumped on there today, I was like, holy cow, his subscriber count has exploded.
Waltz, yeah, that's another thing that I'm going to give him credit for since we're not talking about anything else. Let's talk about how great Walt is. It's got 633 subs, which isn't even a thing. Like, who gives a shit about subs? Because he's really using YouTube as a tool like he should be, and posting his stuff on other platforms, as well as holding this conversation on other platforms, which, you know, I'm going to give him shit because he does some of that on stupid ass, what's it called? Basement Discord.
Yeah.
But he does stuff on Reddit and other places as well, which are at least being archived and, you know, accessible. Because again, my problem is mainly that the Discord shit is hidden, but he does use it, and that's what I'm going to say is he's got 123 views or whatever. Now I don't think that's because all his subscribers are like in lockstep doing whatever he tells them to do, but instead I think it's because he's active on new platforms, the whatever, you know, the next platforms, and he gets a bunch of hits because a lot of those hits were there when I liked it. I was already the 10th thumb, and that was an hour after, less than an hour probably. I think it was 20 something minutes into his thing being posted. So at 20 minutes, he already had a bunch of views. And for a channel that's, you know, on YouTube little, that tells you that they're doing something else out there. I don't know if you notice, DJ's always in there before me, but on the Second Amendment one, what do they call it? The Daily Bullet. That guy will post his because they're recorded, right? He posts his early in the morning, for me at least. Like they happen before I'm aware of them because they happen sometime when I'm sleeping usually.
Yep.
It's sometimes though if I'm awake because I don't have a very consistent schedule lately. I'll catch it an hour, 20 minutes, even, you know, half an hour or something, and it'll have a bunch of likes. I don't ever go back to them. Like I haven't gone back to this one. I don't usually go back to them to see if they get more likes, if that's a steady rate.
Hey everybody, welcome to another.
So I don't want to get sued or nothing, but 39 views. There was probably already 20 something there when I watched it earlier today. And if it's only at 39 now, that tells me that maybe their newsletter or something hit, but it's certainly not organic YouTube views.
What's going on, guys?
Yeah, that tech did clear, so I've been talking all about your video. You can hear us? No?
I can now. Yeah, I can now. I think something happened. That was weird.
I'm just saying that check cleared, so we've been chatting about how great your video.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
No, I really did like. I don't know if you saw because you liked it before I even went back and edited my shit, but I don't know if you how much of that you just heard, but I really do appreciate that you're giving me new angles, I guess, new ways to, at least new vocabulary to use about these conversations, and then I mean somebody's watching your stuff, so it's not the people I hang out with, unfortunately. But honestly, what have they done? Like they've had the ball for a while and they haven't done nothing with it. So whoever's next, I'm guessing, is the people watching your stuff. You can tell us, but you're giving them new strategies for sure. And well, anyway, so I just want to make sure you saw the rest of my comment there because I added it after I think.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did, and I think to that point, you know, there's that old conversation about insanity, right? Which is just or that old quote, right? The repeating the same solution over and over, expecting a different outcome. And I think about that, and I think about a lot of like what we've heard, and what we've heard is kind of continuations of our like political situation, right? Which is really just tribal, focus on protecting the base, focus on rallying the base together to keep it together. And that's not just a left-right thing. That's anyone in any camp nowadays. You go online, right? People, and our social media produces this too, right? Where it will feed you content you like, so you constantly interact with viewpoints you agree with. which has been my biggest difficulty. But I'm going out there trying to engage that liberal gun owner. I'm trying to engage the right wing gun owners. And I'm trying to say, hey, let's just get unity on 2A. That's really like my core super secret mission for my channel content right now. And all the meanwhile, yeah, we got to swing at the anti-gun stuff. And actually, funny enough, I talked about Moms Demand Action. I just snuck in. I infiltrated a Moms Demand Action meeting tonight just now, and then I just got off from that. I figured I'd crash your stream.
Right on. Well, let me ask before you get into that. Is that something you have to effort at? Because the way that you are, well, it comes across, you're obviously fluent in it. So is that something that I just assumed you're comfortable with it because you're fluent, or is it something that you're not necessarily comfortable with that you have to put a lot of effort in? And I guess I'm saying is the whole like being aware enough and knowledgeable enough about the anti-gun positions to be able to speak as effectively as you do.
I use an old trick. I used to work for a private investigator. I was doing like surveillance under the table years ago for like, I only did it for a little bit because it was so sketchy. But I learned that when you're doing any kind of social engineering, you just have to shut up and let the other person talk. And that way there's not really much of a chance for you to get gate kept or for them to smell something wrong with what you're saying. So yeah, it's that was basically my strategy. And then there were some interesting things that they talked about. I documented all the slides and everything from it. But yeah, my general trick is just like, hey, if I understand their words and what they mean, and I learned to speak their language, to your point, then yeah, I can just kind of continue to have a conversation with them. And I know that a lot of this is a language game. GOA dropped a pretty decent video where they called it mind control. And that's what language is, though. Language controls how you think, right? It's a concept we've known for a while, right? Like 1984 and all that type of stuff, right? With the new speak and redefining terms. So,
well, and it can be covert and overt, like your mom saying, like, quit that, don't say that. But then also the words she chooses to use in front of you are two different ways she gets the point across. Sometimes it's like saying it overtly, and sometimes it's just happening and you're absorbing it, right?
Yeah. And so like when they say gun violence, I know that they mean whenever something bad happens with a gun, right? Like, and I take it to mean that. Well, that also tells me that they're precluding other things from their focus, like when bad things happen with knives or when bad things happen with bludgeoning objects or hands and feet. I know that they're excluding car accidents and illness and sickness. There's all kinds of bad things in the world. They're trying to focus on this particular one because they have a particular attachment to this. But that determination in and of itself is still ad hoc. It's still just like, we picked this. Well, is it the best way to focus on violence? My contention, and I think the best argument against them as far as winning in the academic sense is to say, no, that's not the best lens to look at a problem. The postmodern philosophy now, right, where we're at in philosophy today, contemporary philosophy, is we choose lenses that are practical for viewing problems with. That's where I'm gonna piss so many people off with this. That's where intersectionality comes from. All your critical race, critical gender theory, all that stuff. That's where it comes from. It's the idea of it's not to be a woke schooled on the left. The idea is to try to have an accurate lens at understanding like sociological problems. And when people use that, they're not educated on this stuff. And so then they come out and say a whole bunch of stupid stuff. And the right goes, what are you talking about? It's not a sin to be white. Like, I was born this way. Why are you saying I should be guilty? And why are you saying like, and it's a lot of people getting that message wrong because they don't understand the actual thought behind it. And so, there's an extent where it just becomes unproductive to talk about lenses in that way. But when you're talking to the people and you're engaging with the specific lens they're using, if you can show them a better lens that allows them to have better solutions, that's more persuasive, right? And so at the end of the day, I would just say, hey, have a better lens when you're looking at violence overall. And if you need to include gun violence, by all means include it. Guns can be used for violence, just like any other tool. But let's talk about the totality of the issue and let's talk about what's actually impacting it, because when we look at guns in a vacuum, we're looking at a material cause for why, like, there's a gun involved in a shooting. I understand that. Like, that's a joke. Like, so just talk about the actual damn issue. and talk about like, hey, what happens in abusive situations? Well, we have partners threatening to kill people. We have partners who have forcible sex with people. We have partners who used a weapon in the past against someone, who attempted an attack with their bare hands against someone. And then those are the precursors for domestic violence behaviors. And we know what works for interventions. So like, why don't we just marry, what works?
Like you said before, you can stop at that point. You don't have to answer their question for them. You just have to show that there's an alternative to what they're being fed or question, okay, so you think this and then what, or what's next, so, make them question what they're not expecting, or make them reflect on what they're being fed. And I think that's enough potentially it's enough. At least it's something different than what's done in the past, which is confrontation or dismissal, I suppose. But
because their strategy is to present you with that emotional anecdote, and then later on, they're going to gish gallop through statistics. So like, this is the playbook, and we've known this. They're going to lay on an emotional story, give you a whole bunch of statistics, and then say, see, guns are bad, right? That's kind of the macro overview of the play.
So let me ask this. You said that you kind of watched or were part of a thing. I'm guessing it's like a Zoom thing or something?
Yeah, it was a Zoom Moms Demand Action conference. My God, it was painful.
More of here's what's I'm trying to say, like, here's our what we speak, or here's what we say, or was it a conversation where there was like, what do we do next, or I'm so frustrated, how can we, was it like one of our bullshit sessions, or was it more of a, here's an indoctrination session, like, here's what you need to know?
Yeah, it started with the indoc, and then it showed people where to get plugged in. And the indoc was to basically go through a bunch of slides showing a whole bunch of statistics on from like every town. So the well's kind of poisoned right from the gate. And I knew that. They wanted to just kind of continue to go through all of these statistics until they get to a point where there's a gun violence survivor, and it happened to be a woman whose father was tragically shot in the head by a 19-year-old who stole a gun. And so obviously, should the gun owner have practiced better habits and kept the gun on their person when they were moving around instead of leaving it unsecured in an unlocked car? Absolutely. Like, we can reflect on all that, but that doesn't necessarily indicate a policy change should happen. But yeah, they got through the statistics, they got through the stories, and then they started getting into plugging people in and then kind of doing like a quick Q&A. So it was kind of similar to, and they also reviewed legislative wins. It was actually really similar to, what was it? The Second Amendment Foundation thing where you and I met. Yeah,
I was just going to say, it was more of like a orientation, like awareness type of familiarization.
Yeah. Except for they threw in a whole bunch of indoc. Like, they really needed to make their case in that meeting for whatever reason for their position. It wasn't just, hey, we all agree the guns are bad, or we all agree gun violence is an issue. It was, we need to show you and prove to you that gun violence is an issue, and we need to give you a whole bunch of educational resources. But they also showed their hand a lot too, right? So like, they are in our schools. That was probably the biggest. It wasn't a shock to me, but it was something that I hadn't been thinking about. But like, they're sending propaganda to schools for kids to take home to their parents. Like, that's how deep they are. Like, so like Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Unified School District, I believe, is the district where they're able to disseminate Moms Demand Action and Everytown materials basically freely to the children there, and then those children take it home to their parents to tell their parents how bad guns are. So that's an issue in California I became aware of through this meeting. But yeah, there was a bunch of kind of like interesting stuff that they brought up, and it was just kind of like the repetition of the talking points. We're not anti-gun. We don't want to take away the guns. We're not here to take away your guns. And then literally turning around, advocating assault weapons bans, advocating for red flag laws, which is one of their biggest pieces on their platform right now, is to win on red flags. So yeah, it was interesting to hear their perspective. I wanted to keep that line of communication open, mostly so that I can reveal that I'm a 2A absolutist, reveal that I do care about violence and I'm interested in solving that problem, and then I would love to debate one of them on it, one of their volunteers. So I don't know if they'll take it, but I'm going to see if I can use that, hey, I wanted to listen to you and hear what you had to say. I think that, we can debate now and take them onto YouTube. So hopefully I can do something with that. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it might be difficult to get somebody from an organization who has to take an official stand, but having an audience member or somebody who feels like that's their position might be willing to chat with you. And they might not be the best debater in the world, but at least it gets you some measure of distance with them.
Yeah, and like they have an odd fascination with the NRA, as though the NRA is. I understand the NRA's lobbying presence historically, but also they weren't tracking really anyone else on the radar. They're not talking about SAF. They're not talking about FBC. Anyone else really? GOA? No one else. They're talking about the NRA almost explicitly. So no other organizations that were pro-gun actually were brought up. So
yeah, I don't think they win anything by acknowledging that there's any. They need gun owners to be a mono, right? We need to be one thing to them, or at least it makes it easier for us to be as one thing as possible. And the NRA is a buffoon at getting women on the NRA. They've mastered the propaganda on both of them. The NRA has not done the NRA women thing well. They haven't catered to women successfully, and the other side can mock them for that because they didn't do it in enough class or character or whatever sophistication. Again, it's just they don't win anything. And then if they did bring up the other groups, that would just allow their base to research them and potentially read some of their clear, understood, or understandable positions, and that might jeopardize their, again, their. I suspect. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, yeah. So, did you have any topics you want to bring up? You've been doing all kinds of stuff, and I just see what you do live or whatever.
Oh yeah, no, I've been dropping premieres left and right because I like talking with people during the video premiere. So, oh yeah, I should clarify that all my videos that I premiere are pre-recorded.
No, I know that it's a premiere. But what my confusion was because when you were on that little video screen, were you live so that your Discord was watching it?
Oh no, they were. I had to take that chat and move it to a place where no one could keep adding questions anymore. So because basically I put in like a last call and then
you just went into Discord and typed in there, I'm gonna answer questions on a video, and then people just happened to see that and start typing in questions, but they weren't watching you answer them. They were just typing them in blindly.
Yeah, so I told him like the night prior, basically, because the night prior I hit 500 subscribers. So I was like, oh, we hit a milestone. Like, let's just do like a fun little Q&A, right? And then while I was in the middle of filming it, because they had some time to ask questions, and they asked a lot of silly questions out the gate, like the taco thing, and like is cereal for breakfast, is that a soup? Like all the kind of silly questions they asked. And then when we got into the real stuff, that was when I reprompted and just said, hey, I want to answer more questions. Does anyone have anything else? And then got a lot more serious questions. And it was just like, yeah, okay. So at that point, then we shot it. But when I was shooting it the second time, I hit 600, and that was really cool. That felt really good. So yeah, so I just was like, you know what? Yeah, it's a 500 sub Q&A. Wait, nope, it's a 600 sub Q&A. All right, let's do it. Let's celebrate getting this kind of content out there, because it seems like people are eating it up right now. So
okay, because the way that you were on a video, you had that little thing down there where you were live, I guess, verbally, I guess, answering the questions or whatever. And then that's weird. I guess I have my volume turned down. Somebody bought something over at the store. Thanks for that. The way that you were sort of like answering the questions, and it seemed like the new questions were popping up in response to what you were saying. I thought it was some sort of a live feed. I understood I was watching a recording of it, but I thought that was a whole live thing. So anyway, so that's neat. I like it when people are playing with the different things. I complain about Discord, I'll keep saying it, but the way that you were able to bring it up, that's what I was sort of commenting, like, good, you were able to take something that would normally be hidden, a bunch of interaction on Discord, and bring it up onto a platform that does give it some light. And then I'm guessing, well, let me ask, do you shove, I was about to start saying you're so good with your stuff that we've already talked about, but in addition, I don't even think I got a chance to start giving you a pat on the back for having a description of what you're doing in the description, whatever the boilerplate stuff you should have there, that's good. But your sources, almost nobody bothers with that kind of stuff. And then the what do you call, like a table of contents basically, and then a synopsis. Like all of this is gold, not just for the engines, the mechanics of how this whole platform and the whole internet technically works, but for the human beings, that interface, this is valuable because it shows that you've gone, all that. It's given a great presentation to everybody. Somebody who is coming in here who might be skeptical or disagree has got everything that they need. If they're literally going to do the due diligence, you've given them the ability to do it. And you're an example for people who are coming up and seeing the way it should be done. And hopefully a bunch of adults who you could be their kid are going to see this and go, damn, this is the way it should be done. And it's not that hard to incorporate some of these things that Clover right here, this guy spends every Thursday trying to ingrain into people that this is how you work it. So yeah.
Oh yeah. The trick, by the way, when I had my friend come on, Pete Bilzerian, and he was talking about like the gun economy, whatever. I had talked to him offline about some of his like SEO tools.
That's Dan Bilzerian, the billionaire's brother.
Cousin. Yeah.
Cousin.
Yeah. And so, so I was talking with him about, like what he does. And, he just wound up telling me like, hey, I use TubeBuddy, and I went ahead and got like a paid subscription for it, cause it's like $3 a month or something like that. And then it walks you through basically just a checklist. So every upload, you get a checklist of what to do. And then on the back end of that, when I'm uploading, then I just jump into Photoshop and I'm like impact font, bold thumbnail, bold text, like do a stroke and then find whatever. So I kind of have like a formula.
You're talking about in TubeBuddy, the thumbnail little gizmo inside of YouTube that TubeBuddy gives you access.
Yeah, you can actually do it from TubeBuddy. And then one of the other things is, I use Photoshop for mine because it gives me a little bit more control, right? Or a lot more control. It's Adobe, but yeah. So that's one of my tricks for just making sure that I get all this stuff done. But yeah, my biggest thing, and I guess if there's any content creators out there watching tonight, I think quite a bit of your audience is actually content creators, which is really cool. But yeah, my thing is I'll go jump on DuckDuckGo and I'll go jump on Google and I'll hit the news. I'll type in gun control, gun violence, moms demand action, Everytown, NRA, like whoever I need to possibly get news about. And then I go see the stories of the day. I try to find one at least every other day that really stands out. And then I talk about that one. And that's kind of my formula right now. TubeBuddy lets me know when to upload my videos, like the best time and everything. And then it looks like other gun creators now are getting my content to appear at the end of their videos. So like I'm appearing in like their end cards and stuff. So that's been like the value of having that SEO tool and having all those resources there. So highly recommend, because people don't search for content as much anymore, actually. What people are doing to find it is they're staying in that, like, this is what interests me bubble. So you have to have the matching tags and you've got to have the matching descriptions and all that stuff to make sure that you've checked those boxes. So when someone clicks on a gun video, they eventually stumble into your content and then they explore it, they like it, they interact. That's one of the big things that I do to try to keep that mission moving forward and keep engaging people.
Right on. Well, then I appreciate additionally that you're willing, you gave us that insight, because Clover's talked about that TubeBuddy for a while now. I use it. I use the free version of it, so I don't even pay nothing for it, and I get almost all those advantages you're talking about. Dang it. And then I was going to say something else, but I guess, again, thanks for letting people know what you use. But then I guess also thanks for just doing it, because anybody could know what to do. Doing it is an extra effort. You actually did it. Well, I was going to say, you're not wrong with everything you just said there as far as how it's going to hit. There's two ways that the internet's useful. One is archival, the lake, and the other is just being able to sit there, like however you phrased it, where you can just sit there and watch stuff come by. Yeah, I think most people think they're sitting on the side of a river and they're watching the river go by. They don't realize that they're actually sitting in front of a bunch of TV screens, and people who watch everything they ever do and react to decide what's going to show on those TV screens. So you are making 100% influence on what you're watching. In other words, you're not watching the stream, you're canoeing, and they're deciding where you're canoeing. but you're a moving thing and there's stuff moving past you, but you're not standing still. Anyway, so there's the stuff that flows by you, the stream, and then there's the accumulation of stuff. And what you're saying there isn't wrong. In order to get that stream to appreciate what you're doing, you have to label your stuff. And I'm just copying off of what Clover offers every Thursday evening, this kind of data. But yeah, you have to let the stream know what you got so that it can place you correctly. But what you said there about the people aren't searching, you're right. Not everybody searches today, but everybody will eventually search for something. And that long tail stuff is what it's called. That evergreen stuff is you're setting yourself up for that. You haven't experienced it yet, but trust me, when you've got good tags, that video will perform for longer, and it'll perform forever. Until you decide to take it down, it'll continue to perform, because there's nothing about the way the internet proceeds that it's going to forget anything that's out there. So anyway, you've given yourself as much a boost as possible for now and in the future. So yeah, definitely. And you're a great example for people that are watching, who want to see a great way to do it. And like you just said, thanks for the insight that you're actually seeing response from it. Because if you're seeing your videos on other people's videos as recommended and stuff, that's a good sign, right? That it's working. Yeah, and the other thing too is I think also just like continuing to build those relationships. So like I like Discord a lot. That's like, that's just one of my comfort areas. So I'll go crash other, gun content creators on Discord, ask them what they're up to and stuff. Another thing that I'll do is I super chat to people occasionally, not just to support the creators that I agree with, but also just to let them know that I'm there and use that to kind of build a relationship and build a little familiarity with my name. So that low key, it's a strategy that I've used to be like, hey, let me super chat a question at you, because I think this helps contribute to a narrative. If you answer this particular question, maybe this can move a discussion in a really good way. So there's things like that I'll do from time to time as well. So but also I'm really, really active on Reddit too. So I post a lot of my content on Reddit, but then I also interact with a lot of people on Reddit. I'll do some content that's off of YouTube. I'm trying to do a little bit more of that, some like graphic design projects. So one of those was I interviewed that r/liberal gun owners. So like the liberal gun club guys, right? I did a poll of them, and then I compared them to r/gun politics just to see where they were on issues. And you posted a poll and then offered it to the two different slashes over on Reddit. Yeah. And then I asked about 5 or 6 different Discord groups as kind of like a control group for the survey. So that was like another thing that I did. And like Google Forms or something else? Yeah, I used Microsoft Forms, which was a mistake. In hindsight, I would have probably used Google Forms, but an online form service. Yeah. Nothing that just allows you to give everybody a URL so that everybody from whatever platform could use a common thing. You'd get a report on the other side of what everybody said or did or whatever. Yeah. And basically, like with that, what I found was that there was a lot of common ground on probably about 60% of our policy issues that I asked about. So like there are the liberal gun owners out there, while they do, on average, they may disagree or they may be less passionate if you just looked at them as a group. There's definitely gun rights extremists in that group. And there's definitely also some regressive people in that group and some people that are milquetoast fence sitters. So what the survey results actually confirmed for me was that there's a lot of people that we can work with that don't have the same politics as us. And that was really cool. So like being able to see, okay, I can work with them about 60% of the time on these issues. And I know what matters to them. The big thing I confirmed was they are 100% not single issue voters. They won't trade. They won't trade their other principles, their other things that they want for 2A. So we have to come up with a solution around that. And that's something that we can talk about at length, I'm sure. But seeing how they value their political positions, how they what they see as far as like gun friendly policy, how they feel about things like homemade guns or ghost guns. Scary, but how they see all these different issues. It was kind of insightful just to get a beat on that and be like, hey, there is actually nuance with their opinions. They are someone that the right can work with. And that's cool. So that's the type of stuff that I'm trying to flesh out is like, okay, we always talk about how we should unite
and we talk about the obstacles the other people give us and stuff, but we never really get down to brass tacks. So like, let me get some data to help, you know? So I'll try to do fun projects like that from time to time as well. And I want to do more, but I'm unemployed right now, so I got all the time in the world to do it, you know?
I'm going to jump back because we've had some people chatting in the comments here. DJ was throwing some stuff in here when we were talking about types or philosophies and stuff before. He was joking about the philosophy degree, but then he said, what is this? Aristotelian logic is my favorite.
I think, yeah, there's a video where I talked about, so Aristotle in metaphysics discussed a type of causality where there's 4 causal factors for things. So you have like a material cause, a formal cause. So like materials like this stuff, like if you were building a chair, right? So the chair stuff, so like the wood, that's the material. And then you move to the formal cause, which is like your blueprint for the chair or how it's configured. You move to basically an actor. There's an agent that is the causal agent, so the chair builder. And then finally, there's a final cause, which is the intent decision, basically to build that chair. So without those 4 causal things, anything that's caused by an agent can't happen. You need all 4 of those factors. So when we talk about gun violence, if you want to talk about when bad things happen with guns, they require all 4 of those factors. And we've tried removing the guns from people. We've tried taking away guns. We've tried you know, like we're not gonna remove the agents that commit gun violence. You know,
if you take the one element, in other words, from that approach, then you see that it's futile or elementary, right? Like it's not correct. Yeah, that's awesome. That's the way to explain. Like, okay, you think it's so great. Well, there's 4 pieces to this puzzle, and you think by simply removing one piece that the other pieces are just going to all fit together, or that none of them are going to have any problems with that piece missing. Are you delusional, or are you not aware, or are you? And then that changes the conversation, right? Because they're used to you getting mad or whatever they think.
Yeah, and the other fun thing with logical arguments too, as much as we may smack talk those philosophy majors out there, if someone hits you with a logical argument where all of the premises are true, then the conclusion must follow. And that should be something that gives you a lot of confidence, right? So if it's the case that there's 4 different factors that impact firearms, violence, right, whatever, and we can't take away the agents because that would mean we have to kill all the humans. That's not a good plan. We've banned the formal cause already because configurations of guns, the material, are not allowed to be used in a way that's unethical or illegal, right? So the formal cause has already been addressed. We've banned gun violence. It's illegal to shoot people and to murder them. So that's off the table. And then we've tried restricting guns, and we've seen where other people have restricted guns, and yet gun violence still occurs, and yet violence in general still occurs and oftentimes gets amplified. So the only option is to address the final cause, in other words, the decision to act in a violent way, just by its simple process of elimination. So if that's the only viable option, then we have to talk about why people are violent. And that's an uncomfortable conversation because it's not just culture. It's not just mental health. It's not the video games. It's not the internet. It's not the music videos, right? It's a huge collection of things that we can talk about. It's not just welfare programs. It's not just government oppression. It's a whole bunch of things. So we have to untangle that knot, and it's very difficult. But that logical argument means that from there, we know what we have to focus on, which means that the guns need not be on the table anymore. My rights are not on the table for negotiation anymore, and we can prove that logically. So that was the value there anyway.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And that's what I think is going to move us forward than just all agreeing that we don't agree with them, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, because of the lag and whatnot, I don't know if I'm getting these in order. I did see Patriot was out there earlier and said, I guess he's saying he had you two buddy for a while. but it's not accessible to his.
Try
Computer.
using Google Chrome because there's a Google Chrome extension you can get for TubeBuddy, and so when you're actually in your videos, you can have everything drop in while you do it. It makes it insanely quick to find tags and do whatever you need to do. You can also set up a bunch of presets inside of it, and then I think with the paid version, you get the full Keyword Explorer, which is really useful.
And then he's saying, DJ was saying, communication equals sender, message, receiver, still too much room for failure and transfer. By diversifying your approach, you'll increase your reception.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, right? Because you have what's called encoding and decoding, right? So encoding is when you're trying to come up with the thought to say your message. So as I talk, I encode a lot, which is something that I think on like live streams, podcasts, people do. So you can see where they kind of trail off or ramble. That's because they're trying to find the words about the topic they're discussing. Decoding, right, is on the listener's end. They have to hear what you say and interpret it. But there's all kinds of fun things that happen when you try to decode. So like if I go to like a right-wing rally and I say, oh yeah, let's talk about intersectionality and critical theory today. Immediately I'm going to get emotional, like red flags, like pre-programmed responses. Like I've seen what crazy leftists have said, I've seen this and this. And really, I'm just like, hey, let's talk sociology 101 today. Let's talk about how if you stack on layers of suck and you're you have a bunch of reasons why you're sucking right now, it's going to suck to be you. And that's all they're saying. Like it's not. It gets misused, but when you throw in that language, it kind of creates a red flag in your mind to like protect yourself and kind of guard yourself from that idea, or maybe rattle off something quickly in response. And that's something that we have to. I think constantly watch out for our own communication. That's something I catch myself doing constantly. So it's something I try to warn other people about too. But I'm not here to preach intersectionality. That's not my mission today.
like having, if you want to say tools in the, to toolbar, or toolbox, but, just having ways to describe that. Again, I think half the time you don't have to necessarily change their mind. You just have to show somebody who you're having a discussion with that you're willing to go to, more than 50% of the way towards their position, so that you have to demonstrate that you can understand their point of view, right? So that you're not just dismissing them, you're not just shouting your position at them. You're trying to say, look, I understand your position and here's my answer to it. So if you can explain to them that you understand their position in terms that they understand, that they might not realize you have that nuance or that awareness, then that gets that across. Again, you don't have to try to change their mind. You just have to get to them to understand, like, hey, I'm going more than 50% of the way. I'm not unaware of your position. And here's, again, my position. And this is what I'm saying. Now they, hopefully, if they're honest, right, I guess, then they're going to understand that and go, all right, now that you've made that clear, what's your position again? What am I wrong on? Right? I mean, that's our goal, right? At least we're given that opportunity.
Yeah. And one thing that I like to say, and actually I had this because I was doing a mock debate in my Discord, which is one of the other reasons why I really like it, because I can sit there and talk to someone for 2-3 hours about like whatever positions they have, and we can really get to the bottom of them, which is really useful. But one of the things that we got to a point in kind of a mock debate, practicing for dealing with gun control debates and things like that, basically just said, hey, look, it sounds like whenever I bring up something about your beliefs, it sounds like you kind of change the subject whenever there's an issue made and you talk about a different statistic or something else. And it seems like we can't really tie down to one topic. Is it possible that this topic is really complicated and that you could be wrong about something here? And you say something like that, and you kind of give them an out, like you're right. And if they say, yeah, I think this could be more complicated, I think it's possible that some of these things could be wrong, or that we don't know this. And sometimes those really smart, calibrated questions are very useful, right? In being able to forward that conversation well. You just have to be kind of thoughtful with how you administer those. But yeah, absolutely. I think
that's a win.
Yeah.
For some people, that's all you can hope to get. And that could be a major win for some people, to acknowledge that they're not, because there's got to be people on the other side that are walking around like, 100% right. There's nothing an anti-gunner could say that is going to change my mind. And if you just make them acknowledge that, it's a win.
Yeah, and I think like one of the things that I like to do with that is just kind of say like, because if you get an anti-gunner to admit that maybe they don't have all the data, and they like to talk about how we need more data on gun issues, so that's not too hard to do. But like, hey, if we don't have all the data, is it possible that we're maybe taking steps towards solutions for problems that don't exist and skipping past the solutions that we may not have given ourselves credit for, and that could work.
So he's saying Plato is relational. Balancing Plato and Aristotle approaches serves to eliminate. So basically,
yeah,
coming at it with left and up and down and left and right, so you get it from two different angles.
Yeah, I think like with Plato sees a world of forms, so he kind of sees value. Like he sees kind of like a perfect world behind everything else. So there's the actual thing, and then there's the perfect thing, basically the perfect form of the thing. Whereas Aristotle sees the value of things not coming from a perfect world. He sees them coming more from the object itself. So like, I'm Walt and I just have value because I'm Walt and I'm here. And that's kind of a simplification of Aristotle's point. Whereas Plato says there's a perfect Walt out in the ether, and this is the formal Walt, or the reality driven kind of Walt. So, there's two different approaches, but if you can find common ground between those and you can continue to move forward with those, that split in philosophy exists to this day. That's something that's been driven down through all kinds of different philosophers, where they take different positions on how reality just works. And that extends into their ethics. It extends into their epistemology, all kinds of stuff. So it can get really complicated. but yeah, if you can rationalize those, if you can communicate between people with positions that diverse, but as Plato and Aristotle's, then you're doing a good job communicating for sure.
No, I like that too. People, as long as you can express that or something, that you're aware of that element to it or perspective on it, then again, you've made some headway there, and they're going to have a relation. They're going to listen to you in a whole different way, right?
Yeah,
now,
like I
asked you. Sorry, I'm going to cut that off just so we don't go forever on philosophy or whatever.
Oh yeah, no.
I asked you that the last time we chatted. Did you ever get a chance to check out that guy, the Gun Culture 2.0? He was a professor or something in Florida, I think.
Let me see. I don't know if I got the chance to, because I've been so busy with videos, but I'm going to add him to my. Oh, interesting. Okay. Is this?
No urgency or nothing. I just would be definitely curious. I barely am aware of him. I know that he's active, and I know that. Well, I'm just definitely curious on your input whenever you get a chance to check him out.
Yeah, I might. You know what? This might be some good content to do, like a reaction video or something too. I'm going to save. I'm saving. It looks like this David Yamane.
Yeah,
is that the name?
Definitely.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll take a look. I'm very interested.
Anybody, do you have a link? You could throw it in the chat real quick. Anybody who hasn't heard of them, Gun Culture 2.0. I don't know if Clover's out there and has heard of them, or DJ Mate, or Barbecue. I don't know. Whoever might have a thing for his. I'll grab him on Instagram, I think he might do YouTube. Did you find him somewhere, or?
Yeah, I think if I can, I'll drop a link in private chat. I think we can share it, right? I don't have the original stream up anymore, but I dropped it in private chat here.
Okay, thanks. And then there's his Instagram. And then Wheeled, I muted you just because we were getting a feedback, so I don't know if you saw that, but just unmute and chime in if you want to say something. So
sorry about that. Yeah, I had the sync going.
Anyway, so there's this guy, Gun Culture 2.0. So I've been calling. I don't have a problem with that. It's just that. So we're calling Culture 5.0 over here. So that what you were just talking about like what I'm going to say types of philosophy. I think that's definitely worth addressing at times. Maybe not every single time people get together, but having that skill set, knowing it's like knowing karate and kung fu and jujitsu and judo and taekwondo, like they all aren't just martial arts. They do different things. They're for different things. They can be applied in different ways. And it's like that, right? Like having that skill set isn't something you're going to use necessarily, but definitely added to the other stuff. It gives us more strength, more awareness.
Yeah, I think like if we want to shift the conversation to be like really practical and kind of break out of philosophy, but maybe transition.
Yeah.
One thing that's worth discussing is the actual ideological like splits where people wind up going. So the first major split that I see is because so many people adopt consequentialist philosophies like utilitarianism, where they say, hey, we just want to do what's best for everybody, like what maximizes good for everybody as much as possible, minimizes pain. And so you'll see a lot of people make arguments against guns there. And they might even put freedom itself on utility. Oh, I think we're still going. But yeah, so they might even put freedom on utility. So one split may be, if I remove the guns, then does that give you more freedom? Because now there's no chance of violence, which would cause you to get imprisoned or cause someone else to lose their life. So in that case, is that what's genuinely happening? And when you get to the core position, that's one position someone might take. The other major position someone might take would be basically on paternalism versus abandonment as an ethical dilemma. So a libertarian is more likely to cause abandonment with government policy based on this dilemma, because a libertarian just wants to be left alone. But there's some people that can't be left alone. There's people that need welfare. There's people that need help and assistance. There's people with IQs that are below 85 that are unable to learn enough to do a job. Though that's a societal problem we have to deal with, right? So there's absolutely people that can get disenfranchised by absence of government. On the other hand, there's also that risk of paternalism, meaning a government that decides to tell you what you should and should not do because they know what's best for you, even if you disagree, or even if it winds up being bad for you. So having to negotiate and picking a side in that moral dilemma it's a tragedy, right? That's why it's a moral dilemma. And so there's answers and responses to those that different people have. And we all might have different answers and responses. We might reject it. We might reject a certain moral dilemma, or we might take a certain side on a problem. But in those things in like philosophy, it's not necessarily clear that there's a right answer. And even if you go from like, let's say that you think the government should be paternalistic, you might think the paternalistic thing to do is to mandate gun ownership. So you could still be pro 2A and on one side of the, and on kind of an opposite side of a freedom issue. People have a lot of like nuance with what they believe, but when you reduce things down to core positions, you oftentimes find conflicts like those. And that's where the magic happens with persuasion.
So there's a lot of stuff happening out here, and you're saying a lot of interesting stuff, and that makes me want to say a couple of things. First off, how much time we got with you, because I know often you jump out at some point, and I don't want to have.
I think I can go like another 10 minutes or so before my wife will yell at me. So
right, that tells us a lot then. So then, appreciate you jumping in and giving us some stuff to chat about. And the video earlier, so I started this also. If you go to the description of this video, there's a link to Walt's video, which I will just drop a link to right here also. And that was you talking about, I guess, an article about a thing, but basically taking another perspective on a Second Amendment issue. So let me throw something out there since everybody's kind of active right now. As you were describing that, it made me think like, okay, so we as Second Amendment advocates, people who appreciate what the Second Amendment protects and have an interest in defending liberty and individual freedom by educating and making people aware. So we're not trying to shout people down. We're not trying to do anything or force anything. We're just trying to make people aware so that they can understand our position. So ideally, leave us alone, right? I'm putting in here moral versus political versus medical versus question mark, because I don't even know, there's probably other angles. But is there something, is it applicable? Is it appropriate to do a discretionary, or what's the word, like a determining question, to figure out what a person's mind is in? Like if they're going to come at you and it's like, I'm anti-gun, and they just don't say something like I'm anti-Trump, but they say I'm anti-gun. And then you go, how am I going to approach this? If I went at them with a moral thing, but theirs is a very medical, I'm not, if I'm even using the right terms, but if, they're using
Oh
a
yeah,
different
you're fine.
category, is there a way to determine what angle somebody's coming in so that you can use the appropriate type of skill set to go back?
Oh yeah. So so a couple things there. So the first thing, as far as gauging their angle, is I like labeling a lot. So it feels like, it seems like, it looks like, it sounds like, it smells like, whatever, right? And then say what you thought you heard. And try to frame it in a way where you can continue to ask questions, right? So so like, hey, G-Webs, it sounds like you have a question about getting to the bottom of someone's beliefs.
I gotcha. Okay.
And then when I let that hang for 3 seconds, you'll probably talk, right? So so that's one way, and then they'll clarify what they mean. And what you'll do is you'll listen until you get something like, and I'm straight up stealing this from Chris Voss. I've talked about his book before, but Never Split the Difference. Go buy that book if you want to learn a lot about persuasion. But yeah, basically you sit there, you let it hang, and when someone gives you a yeah, that's right, then you know that you've got that, and that's a good time to start going in with your questions and stuff. So so that's the first aspect. As far as when people do come in with these different angles, yeah, they might be gauging something from their worldview or their perspective, and you have a different perspective. So you might look at gun violence as a doctor, and you see all these gunshot victims because you live in the inner city where there's all this crime. And so you're constantly surrounded by that, and that's your angle. Whereas, like, if you and I are coming at it as just like, hey, we're guys that have used guns either for work or for recreation, for self-defense, for sporting purposes, for hunting, like literally any of the many, many purposes that you could own a gun and use it for regularly. And they're just a part of our lives. And that's cool. So we have a different angle on that problem. And when we're negotiating, what's on the table for us is different than what's on the table for them. So I think, like, yeah, that's something where we do have to pay attention and listen. And hey, it sounds like what happens to these trauma victims with firearms violence, it sounds like that's really what's driving you. It seems like as a doctor, your position is really focused on the medical issues with guns. Yeah, that's it. Okay, cool. Well, let's have a conversation about the medical issues, right? And then now you can kind of play their game on their playing field, which is something you can do to make them feel really comfortable, right? So
no, I think, and again, it goes back to what I was saying before. Yeah, once you know that you can, or once they understand either subliminally or consciously that you're playing there in a way that they can understand, then they must know that if nothing else, if they take it on surface value, they're like, okay, this guy is in my lane and he has a valid thing. Or they can go, well, I realize this guy isn't in my lane, yet he's fluent in my perspective of this whole thing. So, wow, this guy must really know his shit. And therefore, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and maybe listen to what he's saying. I mean, again, I'm giving them a lot of credit there, but let's hope we're talking to somebody who's going to change their mind and not somebody who's just yelling.
Hey, Walt, what is your experience? What's your background? Where do you gain all this knowledge? I mean, every time I hear you, but I never hear the introduction. So if you don't mind, can you run me through a little bit of where you're coming from?
Yeah, sure, man. Hi, I'm Walt. Yeah, I'm from California. Just a little bit about me. I started my kind of experience with guns. So I guess I'll just kind of give a quick bio on me with guns and all that. My first shooting was in Boy Scouts. After Boy Scouts, I was shooting like once a year. My dad had a couple guns in the home, and we never really took him out shooting or anything like that. My dad raised me with a little bit of libertarian literature, but I grew up in a very like conservative Christian home, right? For California anyway. Went to basic training. I went and joined the Army early, got the MOS psychological operations. So I learned a lot about messaging and basically how to create propaganda and stuff like that, how to analyze and understand target audiences, how to speak someone's language. That was where I kind of started with persuasion and influential stuff. From there, I've worked a whole bunch of odd jobs, done a whole bunch of different things, but I went to school for philosophy because I really like playing with ideas. It's kind of brought me through where I am. So I've done a lot of work with like customers, customer experience stuff, user experience stuff. I've done marketing work. I've done the psychological operations stuff. I've done military stuff. But I didn't actually wind up owning any guns until about 5 years ago or so. And in full disclosure, a G-Webs exclusive, I wasn't really in on gun culture I would say like where I was like, or I shouldn't say gun culture. I should say I wasn't radically pro 2A until probably about 4 or 5 years ago. When I started to see what was happening in California, I used to think compromise was possible, where like, oh, maybe we can switch our ammo types and that's fine. Maybe we can do more background checks and that's fine. And that's going to work to solve our problems and everyone can be happy. But then I started seeing like the featureless laws in California go through, and I started seeing all that, and realized that I was being young, dumb, and stupid. And I started to realize that there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to own what I want to own. And there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to protect myself. And that's when I started kind of getting more radicalized, I guess, towards defending my own rights. And that's kind of what brought me into gun rights activism in particular. I want to do more libertarian activism in general because there's a lot of rights under attack. But Second Amendment's where I want to start because that's, I think, our biggest battle here in California right now. So anyway,
Sure.
that's the long story short.
I was stationed in Fort Ord. I bought my first handgun when I turned 21 out there and had to go through the 10 or 14-day waiting period.
Yeah, yeah, the 10-day waiting period here, and like during COVID, it shot up. Some people had to wait like 20 days and stuff because the background checks got so backlogged. And yeah, yeah, and Ozzy, if you want to check me out, if I can self promote, just type in the youtube.com/c/Walt Anderson show. I guess I earned the YouTube URL today, so that was cool. But yeah.
Oh, right on. That's cool. I can't get it yet, but eventually it'll show up whenever somebody's got that. You click on their home or their name, and it'll usually start giving you their real URL.
Also, well, I don't think you actually have to put that C in there.
Oh, really?
Because, yeah,
Oh, cool.
if you actually just put in youtube.com/Walt Anderson show, it should pop up with your page. But you know, try it on your browser or something before you take my word on it. But I'm pretty sure it'll work that way.
Yeah, let me try. Yeah, oh yeah, that does work. So yeah, youtube.com/Walt Anderson show. Boom. Cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure why
Thanks for
they put
that.
C in there.
Yeah, it's so weird. I think it's like to mark like that it's a channel, but like what else would it be, right?
Yeah. And like, because I was thinking like, man, you know, if you told somebody .com/C/ my channel name, everybody's going to forget that C. And if it wouldn't work without it, and I was messing around the one day and accidentally put in another channel's name and I didn't put that C and it popped up, I was like, oh, awesome.
Yeah, and by the way, if anyone ever wants to come on or anyone ever wants to do a video or an interview, I'll talk to literally anyone. I think G-Web's bred that into me here because he was literally the like it was Reno May and then G-Web's were the two first like YouTubers that had a following that I really got plugged into within the gun rights community. And I want to kind of keep the traditions and the good things I've been seeing them do going. So. Yeah, if you guys ever want to talk, you ever want to come on, feel free to join our Discord and we can broadcast or we can do a StreamYard or whatever and talk about whatever issue we want or debate whatever you want. Open door. So
Did you, since you kind of jumped in earlier talking about how you had experienced this Mom's Demand session, could you gauge at all how many of them do you think are single issue voters, or is this just another like notch on virtue signaling Karen's merit badge sash?
I think that they're genuine. Actually, I think a lot of the volunteers are genuine. I did get the feel from some of them that it was definitely a rhetorical game. But there's a lot of people who see the gun as the villain in the situations that they faced, right? So there's that. So there are people who could have been there that were not genuine. I haven't been around them enough to really gauge that. Like if it was just virtue signaling, but it seemed to me that the volunteers there, like I give the devil their due. It seemed to me that the volunteers themselves were authentic enough. If nothing else, we know that like Bloomberg and, you know, a lot of the funders and everything, like we know Shannon Watts is inauthentic. We know that Bloomberg's inauthentic. So, you know, there's those aspects where it's someone that's just kind of pushing an agenda and doing it disingenuously, like what Bloomberg's doing in Texas right now and all that. So, yeah, I guess that's the answer.
Well, that's good to know, and I don't want to give them assume anything, because it would make sense that the people who are organizing and doing the work are the one, volunteering the time to do the work, are to organize and stuff, are going to be the truly dedicated ones, and then people that just show up, the fair weather activists, are the ones who I guess I was describing. And that would make a lot more sense, that the 80% of the fair weather ones are going to show up when the 20% of the dedicated ones go through the effort of creating something for them to show up to. That would make sense that they're going to show up. But the reason I'm still got to ask, because it could also be a bunch of people on a paycheck who are literally just there with their clipboards because they're on the clock, and they're being told what to do because this is the way it's done. And it's, that would have been a different type of feedback from you if you would have said, oh no, this is a bunch of people taking marching orders. And you could tell that they were just done it for the 15th, umpteenth time. And, it was all well oiled, and they took their instructions, and, and some of the lieutenants were reporting back to the generals, feedback and whatnot. Like, that would have been a whole different type of feedback.
Well, so they do kind of have that, though. So I don't want to dismiss that entirely. They do have that. So they have section areas, like state level leaders, and then they have locality leaders, and so on. And then the volunteers are. It seems that the volunteers are, at least like in the initial stages, with what they want from us and what they were asking of us. It seems like they want to keep them on a short leash. They want to make sure that they're well nurtured before they go out. And so I think in part that might be indoctrination. And I don't mean that in a way to demonize it. I think that's just what it is. And then I think also in part it's because you're going to jump into a debate. You're going to jump into a very contentious issue where you need to make sure that the facts are really colored for your side in order to win. That's not an easy thing to debate against guys like us here who have been seeing this stuff go on for a while. It's very difficult to argue with us and sound persuasive. So they have to have rhetorical strategies at kind of a macro level that trickle down through the organization. Their game plan, and this is full disclosure, their game plan is to gaslight you. Their game plan is to get you to have an emotional reaction to them, or to be so overwhelmed by emotional stimuli that you can't respond to them. So like they use gun violence survivors for propaganda, because it's very difficult to tell someone with a personal experience exactly how they should feel, or why they're wrong. On the same token, if you get angry and react to an emotional argument, then you've lost the debate, and they know that. So their goal is to force you to either shut up or force you to get angry, right? And you have to be wary of that when you're responding to them. But that's kind of high level, like rhetorical strategy overview for them.
Right, and what's key for us is, since they only do that, and they've only ever done that, then there are strategies to defend against or parry that. And they're going to be basically useless, because they're not really all that, I don't know what the word is, creative or ambitious. I don't know what the connotation to put on it. I don't know how much time you still got, but one question, I guess maybe last question.
I've got a question real quick.
I'll take the last couple. Yeah, that'll be cool.
When you were at that thing this evening, was there any kind of air of desperation or smugness?
There was one volunteer who I thought was smug. I think everyone else actually felt very much like they were genuinely convinced they're on a righteous path. So
any desperation or confidence, I guess maybe that's a better word.
They feel very confident in California. And this was a California area meeting, right? Because that's my locality. So they were very confident about California. They really liked to see what Newsom's doing. They really felt good. There was a certain smugness when they were talking about electing a gun sense president. That's the language they used, gun sense. And they actually have a process for that, where they kind of discuss sending out a questionnaire from every town, I guess. And it goes to all these candidates, and then the candidates fill out the questionnaire. They send it back. It's not an official endorsement, but it's basically like a grade from every town or Moms Demand Action that you can receive as a candidate that says, yes, I'm for all these policies. And then what they'll do from there is they'll disseminate that information out to the base. So it's kind of like when the NRA would do like report cards, right? It's kind of a similar thing. But yeah, they have a lot of strategies in place. And but overall, I got the vibe that they were just kind of getting through their presentation, and that they're like, these are just the facts. But I also got the vibe that they wouldn't really last under scrutiny. So like if you questioned any of the studies where the statistics came from, their presentation would have fallen apart. And I also got the vibe that they weren't really prepared to go in on details. So like one person asked, in the presentation, he said, hey, look, like my mom just bought a gun and I'm really concerned about it because I come from Mexico and, like we don't have guns really, like it's very restricted. And now my mom has a gun in the house, but the police didn't come, and she got it because the police didn't come when someone tried to break in. And I'm wondering what I can do. And so they were talking about alternatives, but there weren't really any other alternatives. One of the guys there just said, hey, look, if she has a gun, we're not trying to ban guns. It's for her to defend the house, make sure she stores it safely. And it's like, well, that admission that you're not that worried about it was somewhat comforting, except for advocating red flag laws, except for advocating assault weapon bans, except for advocating certain safe storage laws, except for all of that stuff. But yeah, it was kind of strange, and it was very cringy, I guess.
Well, I mean, there's a dismissal, like, how dare you? Like, of course, just whatever you want to hear, sit back down and do as you're told.
No, it was just like, yeah, dude, like, if that's what you need to defend your home, you're a young Hispanic man. Your mom thought that this would be a good decision. Just talk to her about why it's important to store it safely. I'm like, well, if all Moms Demand Action was doing was talking about actual firearm safety, like your 4 firearm safety rules, and then talking about the importance of owning safes or gun locks to keep thieves and children out of your stuff, I don't think the gun community would have a problem with them.
Oh, dude, if it was Moms Demand Faster Saves Lives education about gun safety in schools, if they added more fucking letters to their name and incorporated the Faster Saves Lives, the other article that we talked about today, that incorporated since the bullshit and whatever, 14 with educating teachers and other people in school, janitors and everybody. But anyway, yeah.
Unrelated, but would you like their slide deck, G? I can email it to you. The Moms Demand Action slide deck for the presentation.
Sure. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, you can see all the everything, and then I can send you all the links and stuff that they sent me to after.
I think Wield had something for you.
Yeah, I'll take Wield, and then I think I'll bounce out, boys.
Yeah. I live in Lucy McBeth's congressional district. Do you know who she is?
I'm not familiar.
She's a strong anti-gunner. Her son was killed in a gang-related gun accident. He wasn't in a gang. He just was an innocent bystander. Anyway, she came to my door. And then, we proceeded to talk about guns, and she was coming from an extreme emotional place, and it was very difficult, not to offend her, but to say, to give her the facts on America and our standing and our rights to have a gun, and it's not just for hunting, and I went through the whole litany of every second matters, and defunding the police. Well, this was before defunding the police came out. This is about 2 years ago. But anyway, it went on, and we were kind of civil. My wife was listening in, like kind of scratching me in the back every once in a while, with the door kind of halfway open. So it was pretty, but it would be better if I was a little more coached on how to argue with that type of person, because that somebody that had lost somebody, that's a whole different type of argument.
Yeah, and I think one of those things has to be really focusing on empathy first. So, and it seems like your natural urge is to go that way, to be like, this is a tragic thing that happened, and we all wish that it didn't happen. And
right.
And that's something that we can't take for granted. So like genuine empathy is the most important thing when you're having these conversations. You have to show them that you do care about what happened. And then I think one of the things to talk about is like, oh, so you lost, like this is where I would start preparing my questions. So tell me more about the gang violence in that area. Why are the gangs fighting? You know, I would ask questions like that, because if you ask, why are the gangs fighting? Then, oh, well, they're fighting because, because they have drugs and things in these areas that the police are on them for, and it's about controlling territory. Okay, so it sounds like this violence that impacted you might have been because of the war on drugs and the drug fight in this area. Yeah. Well, why are kids joining these gangs? Oh, well, they're joining because they fail out of school. Oh, okay. So it sounds like education is a big deal, and improved education would be really helpful for solving this problem. Yeah. Like, okay. Well, I understand why, I can understand why someone would come after guns. Is it something where you would, but also you think that Americans have Second Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights, right? Yeah, I do. I just think there should be some sensible regulation or whatever. That's what they'll say. So then literally from there, you just go, okay, so it sounds like we need a solution that protects my rights, but then helps these kids in these schools, and that helps this drug war that has this monopoly on violence in that area. And it sounds like a lot of those things actually could have helped. And they might not like that you changed the subject, but if you ask those kinds of questions, you give those kind of labels back, you're really leading them to be you're kind of tricking their brain into rewiring themselves to see the solution through that lens, and you're helping them see the truth, right? So like when you do that, that can be really, really helpful in getting through those conversations, but it can be very, very intimidating to respond to those emotional arguments. So I can totally understand almost like a feeling of paralysis sometimes when people come to me with emotional arguments. That's something I experience. Because sometimes it's just so overwhelming you can't deal, and you're like, wow, I really felt that, and I don't know how to respond. So you have to kind of take a step back and ask those tactical questions, get those really strong labels in the conversation, and kind of guide it to a place where there's a solution you and her can agree on, because you need to find common ground, because you can't leave with your rights. I'm going to assume by wheeled and well armed that you may have a handicap. You may be a handicap capable person, and that firearm is going to be probably the best way for you to defend yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you can't negotiate that, right? So like you can negotiate, but you can't give that up. That is a non-starter, right? So
Right.
yeah. So I would kind of identify some of your skin in the game too. Like, hey, look, I can't afford to give this up. Like, this is how I secure my life. Without this, I could be attacked by anybody. I handle money. I do all kinds of things, So, but yeah, just
the way that you started that, right? When you said, where is it coming from? And then, right. So you get to the point where you go, okay. And let's say that your gun sense laws are super effective, and they remove guns from the equation. You understand that the rest of the equation is still there, and you went down the path of other stuff. But if you just left it right there and say, does that solve the violence? So you've effectively taken the guns out, and now a stray bullet won't hurt another innocent child, but there's still going to be the gang violence one-on-one, if it's fist fights or if it's stabbings or if they,
Hammers.
drugs or whatever they do, if they run each other over with cars. Are you solving it, or are you satisfied that you've solved the collateral damage, but you're okay to let the rest of it fester because it doesn't bother you, because you've virtual signaled? So is that another avenue where you don't have to take it down I really hesitate to bring anybody to the point where they have to defend themselves or bring it to self-defense. But to if these people are out for justice and they say, oh, guns are the problem. Okay, so you remove guns from that situation, that scenario. You remove guns from the domestic abuse. There's no more guns. So now that guy can't shoot his wife, but now he can beat his wife. Now he can stab his wife. Now he can put her in the doorway. He can do stuff to her kids in front of her. That's okay. Like you've solved the problem now? Or are you just so, again, oblivious, or are you so ignorant, or are you so evil that you're willing to take away just this right from the rest of us who you can't acknowledge, you won't acknowledge, don't do anything, but you've just taken whatever. Anyway, leave it at that. I want to.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like more of something that I would say for like a debate stage than I would in like the one-to-one personal conversation.
No, not to the victim or whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, that type of thing can work on a debate stage, because when you point out like, hey, look, I've been trying to work with my opponent here on all of these issues, but they're only focused on the gun. They're not interested in solving any other societal issues, which would be resolved in the same way that we would resolve the gun issue. We have to deal with everything holistically, because we can't approach this with simple-minded policy, where we're one-track minded, focused on a particular item that sure may be unique and maybe has its own statistical aspects that are unique. But if we're not dealing with domestic violence, then we're allowing women to get beat. I can't allow that. If we're not dealing with gang violence, we're allowing Black kids to get killed in the street. I can't abide that. That's not acceptable. So we need to come up with a solution, and anything short of that is morally wrong. Any solution short of that is morally wrong, and like it just identifying that on a debate stage, oh, that would crush someone. So yeah, that would be a winner. But yeah, I think on that note, I know I would love to stay and talk all night. However, my wife is proceeding to send me menacing text messages, so I think I'll bounce. But if you guys are cool, I think I'll probably jump in sometime next week.
Anytime.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, guys.
Great.
All right, have a good night.
So
See you all.
looks like DJ was flipping out that I didn't ask him about here. Can we objectively experience anything? So barbecue, why don't you just take that one for Walt, step in and just answer that one for DJ so he can calm his jets.
Sorry, I was reading that. I'm not sure what he's referring to there, though, as to what Walt had said.
But DJ just wants to know if we can really experience anything objectively.
I mean, truly objectively, you would have to understand every point of view, right?
I have no idea. I'm guessing that's one of those things that can't be answered.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not.
I don't think he liked your answer. He said it was reprehensible. Anyway, I don't know what's going on. I don't know who else is still out there. So yeah, Walt jumped in. That was pretty fun. So started out by chatting about some of the stuff that I've been watching during the day, I guess. So we had Walt's show where he was talking about that Moms Demand article. And then we had the Daily Bullet where Angela Armstrong was on from Faster Saves Lives on the Daily Bullet. I watched the rocket, the Delta Heavy take off. Those are Eon Flux giant rockets. This one wasn't as giant as they could be, I guess, but it was it's their massive payload rocket. I don't know what they were doing with it, testing something. It's been super fun watching the NASA live people.
This one holds something like 5 tons or something like that, or much bigger than the previous rockets.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know the details, but I know that whenever I seen some sort of infographic, it blew me away. Like, if I'm wrong, I don't think I'm wrong. I think it was something like big, multiple times bigger than anything else we've ever thrown into space at one time. There might be another country, but I think it was the biggest thing that we've ever thrown into space. Now, they're not testing the whole thing, but they were testing this thing yesterday with 2 rockets on it. And they go, we're testing these 2 rockets on this spaceship, right? And they're testing such and such things about it. And these are basically spaceships that go up, they blast for a while, and then they just drop back down so that they can keep reusing them or whatever. So they're like, I think they said there's 2 on this test rocket. On a real launch or the heavy launch, there'll be 42. So 42 of these rockets to get, and these rockets are already bigger than anything we've ever sent into space, if I understand it correctly. And they're going to have like a ton of them on these big ones. So yeah, we're going to be able to take like actual stuff into space pretty soon. And from what I understand from listening to these things, they do these launches quite often. This wasn't anything spectacular. It was just taking a bunch of stuff into space, I guess. But they'll have like blackouts in the coverage, and they'll be like, and now we're going to go off air because, or at least they'll black out the coverage because everything that happens now is top secret or whatever, nobody's business. So, and then they'll come back to coverage when it's, all the payload's been removed and sent out into orbit.
Is all this at Cape Canaveral?
This one was, I think so. And they said that the launch window or the time of day and the place that they launch is all to do with what they're putting up there and where it's going to be parked. They'll launch so that they can be as efficient as possible so that they drop the thing off as efficient as possible. If they need to launch at noon on a Saturday, then they're going to launch at noon on a Saturday. If they need to launch it, November on a middle of the night in California, that's where they're going to launch.
So I do have. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I do have an answer for DJ's question on if we can view anything objectively. I think that we actually can view things objectively. I think, in a sense, it's one of my bigger issues. Is I've mentioned it before that I am incredibly indecisive, and that is because I'm able to view things in such a objective manner where I'm not influenced one way or the other, and I'm able to see both sides of the argument. I think when it comes down to it, though, there's a difference in viewing something objectively and then making a decision objectively. Because at that point, if you're making the decision, you've probably been influenced one way or the other, and it may not be so objective anymore. It's going to be a bit biased.
It has to be biased, though. I mean, at least that's why you observe, and that's why you obtain experience so that you can start to compare and create a bias, right? And usually it's in your self-interest or the self-interest of whatever your self-interest is in.
Yeah, so I definitely do think that we can very easily view things objectively. It's just, one, I think it's going to be dependent on the person, and two, how willing they are to do so. There's been plenty of times where somebody's mentioned something to me where I first response would be to we'll just say bite their head off or something, and I've got to dial it back for a second, listen to what they're saying, and keep an open mind and move from there. And there's been a lot of things in my life, like when I worked corrections, I was under the mindset, hey, you did the crime, do the time. You're a grown-ass man. You made a grown-ass man decision. Now you're going to deal with some grown-ass man consequences. Then after working in the prison system, I was like, you know what? A lot of these people in here aren't that bad. They made a mistake or something. And through being open-minded and viewing things objectively, eventually I was able to have my opinions change. But if I wouldn't have been open-minded like that, I would have never listened and paid attention to the other side to see what they were saying in the first place.
$2021 calendar.
When you first started, before we talk about that, because what you were just saying there, when you first started saying that barbecue, I was thinking you were going to go a different direction, and I thought you were going to say you want to be objective, but you don't want to be so objective that you're stalemated or you're stagnant, right? That you're constantly evaluating and you never make a decision or whatever. And I had a thing for that. So even though you didn't say that, I'm just going to throw this out there because it was interesting. But I saw a thing mathematically. I think it was like 42% or something cool like that. But I think it was like 4 out of 10 is pretty much the mathematical If you've got 10 choices, if you observe 4, you can make your decision because it's a waste of time to go to 5 or 6 or 7. It would obviously be a waste of time to wait for 10, right? You would just waste your time forever, seeing every option, and it would be too early at 1 or 2. So mathematically, it's like I think it's somewhere between 4 and 5, but it might just be right at 3. Right at 4. That you can look at 3 or 4, maybe 5 options, make your decision, because otherwise you're just wasting everybody's time. I don't know if anybody else has applied that ever. I just saw it in a maybe more of a theoretical math type of thing, type of discussion. But
Yeah, I could understand that.
In sales, I always try to keep it down to less than three choices for the customer.
well, that's interesting. Whenever I worked at the shop, I would get in trouble all the damn time. So I didn't work on commission, and I'm verbose or whatever. I don't care. I got nothing else to do, and I'd be bored, and I didn't want to sweep or something, like a vacuum or something boring, right? Or I could talk to a customer. So if the customer came in and was like, I don't know what to buy, I'd be like, all right, well, roll up your sleeves and grab a cup of coffee because we're going to be sitting here talking for the rest of the afternoon, But yeah, I get shit for that because that ain't conducive to anything. Like nothing about that is right for a gun shop, really, and it isn't. That's great for this, but it's not right for a gun shop. But anyway, I was asking who all is out there. I don't think anybody else is out there. We had a bunch of people watching. They were just all the Walt fans. That's the other thing Walt's bringing to the table is a whole different set. I suspect there ain't too many longtime gun owners that are already listening to Walt. I think he's assembling a whole new group of people to the conversation.
Yeah, he's wickedly intelligent. And I don't mean wicked in a bad way. I meant just
in a good way.
Yeah, uber.
One of the nice things is where he's coming from, being in California. He's kind of surrounded by the other side, and like the whole Reddit stuff and some of these things that he's getting involved with. Even if I ask people around here, how do I get into a law demand action Zoom call? I would just get these funny looks at like, what the hell did you just say? Nobody would have a clue. But being in that environment, he's kind of got that little hardwiring where he can tap into it a little bit easier, which is pretty neat too.
Yeah, but he's kind of surrounded at all times by he's behind enemy lines. We'll just say it that way more than not. Like here, in Georgia or Pennsylvania or Arizona, you're kind of I'm sure you have a lot more gun friendly neighbors than you don't have.
I mean, I could probably move to some neighborhood and not be like that. But yeah, no, the other way around. Or like you're saying, for sure. I mean, like I said, I have to go find some place to not have gun people in Arizona, I think.
Right.
Or at least people that could care less, like literally care less. Like if you said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about gun laws, they would just walk away because they could care less. That's pretty much what it's like out here. And that's good. I don't think that's a problem. That's one of those things. It's like, I guess I've never thought about it before, but we should reconsider those people in the middle if they're really bad or not. Because honestly, the ones that understand gun owners and just don't care and are never going to passionately say one thing or the other, I got nothing problem with them. Like that's most of the people I know me and know that I'm nuts about guns. And are like, oh, okay, people that are nuts about guns are just weird like him. I know people that are nuts about Star Wars figures. Like, it's no big difference. So, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's a problem. I think those people are solidly never going to be swayed the other way for damn sure. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a group of them that are wrong or like been duped. Those are the ones we somehow have to target.
Yeah.
But no, I think Walt's the thing about Walt is not that where he's at. We've talked to people like we know another melting snowman who lives in California, but we know he goes around pushing people over and being aggressive because he's a typical gun owner. And in California, he's out of place. It's juxtaposition. First, he's a snowman, so he's desperately running into air conditioning all the time, knocking people over for that, worried about kids making snowballs out of pieces of them or whatever. But then, because he's a gun owner, he's always mean and aggressive, right? Wanting to shoot people because of parking spaces and whatever, what have you. So even though he's behind enemy lines, he's not helping nothing. He's probably more of a noxious jerk over there, where it sounds like Walt's able to deal and not like a fish out of water. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but it's not really a fishing show, but I think you'll catch my drift.
Well, in a sense, it's kind of like the wolf in sheep's clothing. I mean, to us, we wouldn't consider him a wolf, but to the anti-gunners, he is the wolf. He's everything that they don't want to be confronted by.
I don't know. We can't give the antis some sort of demonization either. Who knows? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But I guess I don't want to give them benefit of the doubt too much either. So they're a bunch of jerks.
Hey guys, my internet's going to dip out at a little after 2:00, so I'm going to get out before I start roboting.
Oh, yeah, no, thanks for jumping in. I'll probably be ending it here before too long. As much as
All
I
right.
like chatting all night, I don't really have the ability to keep doing it every night because I work on other stuff, and that's what I want to talk about next. So I've got this project that I've been working on periodically since years now, technically. And in this video here, I'm not going to play it, but I talk about how originally we made the Shooter's Almanac in 2019 for 2020. And because of the 2A rally, basically put that on hold and just worked on it without really putting a lot of effort into it. And then because of the way this year was, I took that information from the from the almanac, which was basically 1 page per week, 50 pages, and changed it into 1 page per state, kept it right around 50 pages, but reorganized and started adding even more info so that it would basically be an illustrated reference, an illustrated resource for our Second Amendment, everything from industry to culture to individuals to anniversaries to inventions to laws and all kinds of fun stuff. So that anybody's having a discussion or creating content or part of any kind of participation in the 2A stuff, it's a reference. So if you want to remember who's got the biggest gun shop or where something came from, hopefully it's something that can be thumbed through and used to make other efforts more accurate. So that was an effort, but it's just a mess. It's only my second book and I'm still figuring stuff out. So somewhere along the line, I wanted to make another book and scratch another itch that I've had. And that is that the firearms museums, which I enjoy, sit around moping more than I do because nobody goes to their firearms museums. And just like this show, they sit around not doing anything about it. So nobody goes to their damn museums. And then they don't invite me to their little meetings where they get together in Wyoming and bitch about nobody going to their damn museums while I'm driving using 200 people who support us on Patreon, putting gas in the van. Eventually they helped put a transmission into the van and paid for a shit ton of gas so that we could drive, for the last 3 years, 60,000 miles to 29 of those museums. And since they're always sitting around moping about nobody going to them, I created this passport and I sent that to them 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and they basically did nothing with it. So I waited a little while and then I just did something with it. Now that I'm printing books, I decided to print it. So that's what the Firearms Museum book is, in a way to make people aware and to encourage them to visit our firearms museums. So I took the best of those two things. I took the firearms museums and put one on each page, or one on each month, I guess. And then I took the almanac stuff and crammed it back into a calendar and added it to this calendar, and bought a machine so I can add that little curlicue thing to the top and another machine so I can stick plastic onto paper and make it all rigid, and then proceeded to make a calendar out of that. And
What do you charge for the calendar?
well, that's the thing. There's no charge for it because it's impossible to really make in any kind of production. So it's mostly a prototype and a thank you to our Patreon. So if you're a Patreon, you either have one on the way or there are going to be some opportunities for you to grab one. But mainly it's just the accumulation of info. The paper and cutting holes and all that kind of shit turns into, you know, a whole nother thing. And I'm not necessarily a calendar builder or a publisher or nothing, but anyway, just kind of showing it off. We will eventually have them at the store once I can kind of get a handle on what's doable or not. It might look real easy when you look at a video, like, oh, look at this, that you just poop out nice looking calendars like that. There's no way he went through like a zillion fucking iterations of this and like 500 wasted laminated pages and 2 different brands of lamination because one of them wrinkles because it's $2 cheaper in every wrinkle, like every other page. And like we can't read half the shit and the blue keeps running out because it's the awesomest color and red sucks. So, you know, none of that stuff comes up when you look at a video like this. So I can show this stuff off and I can say thank you to the Patreons for making it possible to create this stuff. I'll do what I can to appreciate them for making it possible, but I'm not a fucking calendar creator and I'm not a publisher. This dude's a publisher, and one day I will remember to put a bunch of this stuff into a big ass envelope and send him a bunch of it, and I'll get some professional assistance with this stuff. But for now, hopefully you'll be satisfied to know that the stuff is being created, and at one point I'll be enough of a capitalist where I'm not crippled with debt where I can do something with it. But until then, the 15 or 30 people that might appreciate this don't justify the $3,000 it would cost to make a run of a calendar, at least as far as I can. So yeah, these are neat things that I can play with thanks to these 187 people that make it possible for us to play with this stuff. Eventually, I'll keep trying and I'll find somebody that can make it possible on a little easier basis or something, but a practical basis, I should say, make it easier financially. But until then, we'll have fun creating the shit.
All right. Good night.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in.
You
See you,
bet.
Will.
Thank you. Good night.
So what's he saying? I feel the trick is to not allow the anti-person to label you as soon as they label you. That's a good point. I don't know. Jump into a chat sometime or elaborate on that because that would be a good one for discussion. All right, with that though, like I say, I can't get calendars like that made without taking time to do it. So we're hitting right around the 2-hour mark. DJ got another theoretical question that'll take 42 hours to answer. Another unanswered question. Is P equal NP?
Anybody wants to take a shot at it?
What's that? What'd you say, DJ?
Hey, what did I say? I didn't know my mic was on. The cat must have stepped on it. Unanswerable questions. Yeah. No, what those do is they help us to exercise our mental muscles so that we can see that what we do know is that we don't know anything. And throwing out the Eastern philosophers, Descartes as a counterpoint to the Greeks because he's European. Now, if we start with those base posits or proofs, we can go through them in an ABC manner. You know, if A, then B. If not A, then B or C. If not B or C, then X. And the X is where you really get to build that muscle because you're trying to, as you were barbecue, you had a great answer to the question. But the conclusion is honestly that you're always going to be subjective. You can't shed it entirely. So, I mean, just to use a simple example, though we may have come from a woman, though we may have been raised by a woman, though we might have joined a woman and created women together, we can empathize slightly, but it's really more akin to sympathy, because can we really understand that? Now, I have a midline incision from umbilicus to pubis. So when the conversation about cesarean sections occurs, I say, well, mine wasn't a latitude, but it's a longitude in the same general area. So I know what it's like to have your abdominal muscles sliced open and separated and never re-knit back together, and how frustrating that is. But that empathy, at least with a similar condition, still doesn't get you past 20 or 30%.
That I had a
So-
robot uterus put in so that I could experience childbirth because I'm so woke.
But I use that as a relatively
given to a poor orphan.
straight. So yeah, I mean, I do like having those unanswerables as part of an initial conversation with people, because but only really if you can kind of tell that they aren't a complete reactionary, mired in their own morass and beliefs, so that they object to you and your suggestions entirely.
What's
So-
morass? What's morass?
Spinning around, I think molasses, people in their thoughts and whatever, they're moving through molasses. They're not fluid. And it's like a group think concept, at least the way that I apply it. But yeah, I mean, we will always be subjective. And that's also not just, it's experiential, not just, like the example I use with male or female, but anything else. What I really don't like a lot of the time, especially in 2020, is all these white people insisting that the Black Lives Matter movement is, well, it's not that they're making a judgment about what they are not. They're trying to make judgments on who they are, without considering that not everyone is out in fucking Portland stomping down the streets, throwing shit at cops, abusing fucking Trump folks and all that other bullshit. So I was like, you really got to understand that you're never going to understand. And when Walt was talking about trying to diffuse, people's proclivity for advancing their own like ridiculousness through their misbelief, you really have to point out to folks that, okay, you're coming from suburbia. So if we had a problem with somebody down the street painting their fucking house purple, okay, we got an issue here. But since they don't deal with violence, they don't deal with minorities, they are so sectioned off from themselves. I hear tons of people in every goddamn chat and on Facebook and Instagram where they simply will not concede that a portion of BLM or anybody else, LGBTQ, there's that cat at the conference, I'm sorry, that woman at the conference, and I in sub chats and stuff like that, prejudice and vilifying people who are trying to participate in our incredibly white, incredibly conservative, incredibly ass-ended approaches to a lot of things. People just need to fucking wake up to that. Not being down with LGBTQ or you don't have to be down for Black Lives Matter, but you have to be down for lives. And if you reduce their value in your aspect and your opinion simply because of those small divisional fractions, you're a jackass. You're a pure D-braying jackass. And the idea that you want to continue to subvert the ability for anyone, not just to social climb, but to survive through the mean seasons of poverty and violence from suburbia, send those fuckers my way. They can be in my neighborhood for a night. And then we can go to the next one that is worse than mine. And then the next one that is worse than mine. And eventually it'll get to the point where the person is going to be so fucking nervous about their own personal safety that they're finally going to tap into the understanding of what it is that makes them want to be so divisive, so shitty, and so fucking exclusive, because they're the power group. Power hungry individuals need to fuck off. We need, because it's a disingenuous bunch of shit. We need to be able.
So strategically or tactically, are you going to go to the general and try to dissuade him? I mean, that is a tactic for an assassin or something, or some kind of spy. But
yeah,
realistically, don't try to go to the person who's dead set in their beliefs and try to base a position or strategy on changing their mind. You can remove their audience and they're useless. They can be upset as they want and as diehard as they want alone. If we can remove the people that don't have such a delusional lockstep or whatever glitch that you're describing there. I mean, yeah, that's those people have issues, but we're not their therapist. Our job isn't to cure them. Our job is to make people understand our position and to leave us alone successfully, right? Again, tactically, strategically, efficiently, those battles aren't the ones that we want to take on, I don't think.
Oh, I don't know. I'll take it from top to bottom. And I think that it is no less.
Just like Churchill says, you can't get to your goal if you stop and throw a rock at every barking dog along the way. You'll never get there.
Yeah, I mean, I caught that quotation the other night, or the paraphrase of it, but the point that I'm trying to make is it doesn't matter whether it's the top or the bottom. If you initiate and engender change, you can measure success. Now, if you want to take a plus, a times 1,000 bonus round for hitting the general instead of the peon or the pawn, well, okay, shoot for the fucking stars, buddy. But what are you going to do in between those shots at the sky? Bring more people onto the observation team. Bring more people to the launch crew. Bring as many people as you can into the fold where they feel.
Trying to preach to the person who's a diehard when there's a million people who could almost care less one way or the other. They just need to have a logical explanation in front of them, or they just need to understand that they've been duped, and then they'll leave us alone. Like, there's a mass of people that if we go, hey, we're not crazy, they'll go, oh, this isn't a concern. So the person over there who you're concerned about, the person you were yelling at, the person that's so evil and horrible, let them be evil and horrible. We're not their therapist. I'm saying that there's no win addressing that person when there's so few of those people. We know that they can affect a lot of people, but if we can reach a lot of people, then we're out of it. Then we bypass them.
Okay, I'm in a parking lot last night. Drunk or crackhead dude is verbally attacking people as they're getting out of their cars and trying to transact their business. I decide, because I was waiting with someone and they were inside the store, to see what the hubbub was. Motherfucker is calling some young man's girlfriend as they exit his truck a whore. Homeboy goes over and stands in front of the guy, trying to egg him on. That's where I just gave a little verbal indicator. It's like, hey, man, step back from him. It can be dealt with in another way. Now, for all of the stupid fucks who think it's okay for some guy to have his First Amendment exercised and throwing, insults and, like a severe one. I mean, we're almost up to cunt. If you do core, you're going to do cunt eventually. I didn't want it to get there. It is not my responsibility to be the therapist of either one, but it is my responsibility as a fellow traveler, a walker on the earth, and a fellow human being to intercede when the abuse of power, in this case, masculine power, is being unduly wielded. Not going to tolerate it. Right inside the door with me observing him, and I'm talking to the manager, and I'm like, you need to get somebody out here. If you want to call 50, do it now. Their response time is going to be limited, but this guy is either going to get his ass kicked and you're going to have all kinds of crazy lawsuits from him, or he's going to punch the other guy and that guy's going to be arrested, and then you're going to have problems from the other one.
All right. So you brought up a specific real life situation where we were talking about having an online conversation with groups of people versus an individual who's anti-gun, or having an individual conversation with somebody who's diehard anti-gun versus having that big scale conversation with many people. You're talking about having an altercation in a parking lot. So we're definitely talking about two different things here.
No, I was talking about unseating the balance of power from the masculine violent energy. And the reason I used that as an analogy.
Gun people.
Okay, it was an analogy, G.
I hear you.
If someone is trying to use their bulk, their masculinity, their power, then in an undue way, then someone needs to head check that shit. If it's not head checked, the guy goes on. He commits these further intrusions into the peace of others. Now, if somebody had come up to me and said, bro, First Amendment right, he can say what he wants, I'd be like, yeah, you're right. But ethically, it's not acceptable. That's all. So yeah, if we want to shift back to how that's incorporated into the, into firearms debate and Second Amendment, I'm totally prepared for that. Having Walt join the.
We're shutting it down. It's 2 hours in, so
okay. Well, I waited because I didn't want to stomp all over him, and I was hoping that we'd be able to elevate the conversation up to the 5.0 level tonight. But if he's going to double back next week, I can be prepared for that, and I will actually join the voice chat at that point. I look forward to it. So I guess in the meantime, everybody have a great night, and see y'all tomorrow.
All right. So barbecue, you got anything else before we head out?
No, I don't think I got anything. Tomorrow's Free Patch Fridays. I mean, granted, anybody still watching is probably well aware of that, but figure I'd plug that real quick. Gee, if you're saying anything, you are muted, sir.
Oh, snap. Shit. So, damn. Where did it end? Did I say anything there? What is the last thing I did? You said something about Free Patch Friday, and I was talking.
I said Free Patch Friday, and then it was just dead air.
Okay. So, yeah, I was saying thanks for saying that. I was working on something earlier. I was planning on working something earlier today, and then I forgot it was Yankees Day for the chat. And I was listening to Clover before that. And right before that was the rocket, whatever the hell it was called, the heavy whatever, blah, blah, blah rocket went up, and that was pretty awesome. So they're neat because they have some, I forget the details, but they send off hydrogen gas, I think, all around the outside of it, right at the last moment before it ignites, so that they can change the temperature or something. I suspect it has something to do with the aluminum, because it looks like they're using a really thin aluminum. And I don't know if you've ever seen like aluminum containers can change the pressure on the inside and the outside, and they puff up or get skinny. I think it's something like that. They do something though, so basically it catches fire in like a big orange fire plume, and then its normal engines pick up thrust, and it starts to launch right from that big fire, like extra fire plume that they said does something, but they do it intentionally. Just makes it really impressive. Plus, it was done at night. It was taken off at night. So anyway, that happened, I think, during somebody's show, like in the middle, because I remember I was kind of muting back and forth to pay attention to the description from the rocket people or NASA. Anyway, then Clover's and them did that show. And what was it about again? Clover's show was about
communication, I believe.
Yeah, context, conveyance, and communication. And once again, they got they can't really figure out what I'm trying to say in the comments, I guess. Or they intentionally mix it up so that I'll say it on this show so that I get extra plugs. That might be what it is. And then anyway, so then I was saying that, and I don't know, because I was in all those chats earlier, I didn't do what I was planning on doing for Free Patch Friday tomorrow. But that's good because now that I've thought about it more, I think I might change that up a little bit. And since we only went 2 hours tonight instead of longer, appreciate you guys letting me cut it at 2 hours. It gives me some time to work on stuff before I fall asleep. So I'm going to work on something for tomorrow.
Awesome.
Let's see, saying great video barbecue. What video? What are you talking about? Video talking about?
Yesterday I had a video drop. I'm trying to think of what it was about though. Oh,
I
it
saw you
was
did
I
about
was
a-
comparing my Ruger SR 1911 to my Dan Wesson that I picked up a couple months ago.
Some kind of a fun video. Right on. So thanks to everybody for having a great chat. Walt did a chat earlier today. That's what got us started talking about Walt because it was a pretty interesting chat. And then we had an awesome discussion. Got turned into philosophy and how that applies. I thought that was pretty awesome. So thanks DJ for digging into that, and Ozzy for taking time away from the holsters, and Hap. Glad we could distract. And although David didn't say a lot, we got one from David G out there. Trying to see if anybody else. Clover was out there. See, he does his chat earlier in the day, and then he watches this one to learn how to do a good chat. And then Honda was out there also. He steals ideas from this chat and then puts them on Sunday and acts like they're his ideas. And then that was it. I know Mississippi Thunder was also out there. So we had a pretty decent assortment of folks, and we'll
Yeah.
back